I'm delighted to be here at Burning Hot Wrestling with Zack Gibson. We've got a massive show coming up tonight in Manchester, but in Liverpool, a big night for you, winning those tag team titles. Tell me all about it.
Well, I've been wrestling around the world now for 20 plus years, but it's still a special moment to come home to your hometown. My dad's and my brother and my nieces were in the crowd and win some prestigious titles that people are pretty highly sought after now. So it doesn't matter where I go. I've wrestled over in China, I've been in the States for the last 5 years. There's something special about coming home to your hometown, and when you can cap it off with a big win like that, it's a special night all round.
Absolutely, it must have been tremendous to win last night, but I know you want to do the double. Are the models in for a rude awakening tonight?
Oh yeah, it's one of the most fun things in my career is going back to Liverpool and winning a big match. Just below that is turning over the Manx in Manchester. So if I can come to Manchester and play spoiler in the same weekend, that's I'm going to go home happy.
Absolutely. Now talking dream matches, I know the Hardy Boyz is a match you desperately want. How would that go down either in TNA or Burning Hot Wrestling?
I mean, GYV versus the Hardy Boyz, that's a marquee match anywhere in the world. First promoter to be able to put that thing together is the winner, in my opinion. I think there's money on the table. There's still a handful of, more than a handful of dream matches still on the cards for us, do you know what I mean? Like, we've been doing this for 20 odd years, but along the line, every year there are new up-and-coming tag teams that appear on the scene who are innovating in different ways that we haven't seen before, adding new twists to things that we've never seen before. It's the great thing about wrestling, it just never stops. There's always someone hungry coming from behind you. There's people coming from different areas that you never expected. There's top singles guys forming tag teams, and then before you know it, there's a new dream match on the cards. So it's still just as exciting as the first year that I was in the job. Hardy Boyz, though, is probably, I would have to say, I think Hardy Boyz is still top of my list. Big Jeff Hardy fan when I was a kid. Tried to emulate his style. I realised it wasn't for me. But I've now carved out my own niche, myself and James as a tag team. We have our own niche, and it's very different to the Hardy Boyz. I think we'd make fireworks together.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned you and James there, a fantastic tag team partnership. But if we were to remove him for just a second, we know you're a massive Liverpool fan. If you could team up with one Liverpool player to make a tag team, who do you think you'd go for?
It has to be Steven Gerrard. I don't think there's another answer. I don't think there's a better example. Like, Steven Gerrard and Rocky Balboa are the same character. You watch Istanbul alongside Rocky, it's the same story. So I don't think there's a better footy player to pick who would have more fire and fighting spirit, Japanese strong style. Steven Gerrard. You watch any Japanese legend throwing those lariats, and then you watch Steven Gerrard slide and then slicing someone at the knees, or you watch someone fire up and start running through their opponents, and then you watch Gerrard hitting those screamers from 40 yards. It's got to be Gerrard. He's synonymous with fire and hard hitting and grit and stuff like that, and that's what we've built our act on. That's what I've built my act on. So yeah, Stevie G.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when you were at WWE NXT UK, you obviously had those tag team titles. When you were at the Performance Centre, I know that you were alongside Shawn Michaels having Tesco meal deals with him. So tell me all about
that. I mean, what do you want to know? What his meal deal of choice was?
What his meal deal of choice was, and what advice he gave you as well.
Yeah, Shawn is obviously, like, for my money, wrestling's so subjective that it's hard to pick the best ever. It's almost impossible to say that any wrestler is the best wrestler to ever do it. But if I were to say Shawn Michaels the best ever, there's no one in the world that could laugh at me for that answer. He's right up there, count on one hand. You know what I'm trying to say, right? Like, he has to be considered one of the very best to do it. So to then be sat underneath that learning tree, as you can imagine, there are very few people in the world with the knowledge that he has. And we thought we had things figured out, but we obviously were humble enough to still listen and still try to learn. And then after really getting in the weeds with Shawn, that's when you realise, like, oh, we've just leveled up a whole level in this one conversation. I don't necessarily have the time to go into like specific little details, but Shawn has a mind for it where he can turn little things on the head, little things that maybe didn't feel so important at one time. And then when he gives you this alternate way of looking at it, suddenly you start hearing an audible difference from the crowd, and the whole thing is just so much better. So to somewhat try and wrap that up in a coherent way, he's one of the best that's ever done it in the ring, and he's a fantastic coach to those that are willing to listen and really sit with him and learn for things. I've got all the time in the world for Shawn, and if ever he was around, I would always ask him for advice and still try to learn from him as much as I could.
Absolutely. Now, I want to touch on a couple of guys you've been in the ring with. The first time I saw you wrestle on TV was against Rey Mysterio. So you tell me what it was like matching up alongside him, and also Rob Van Dam as well, because I know you've wrestled him.
I did too. Rob Van Dam was one of my favourites when I was a kid as well. He was one of the first I got to tick off the list of guys that I was watching when I was growing up. And Rey Mysterio is the best luchador that there's ever been. Throughout my career, sometimes you get told that you're about to wrestle someone and you've heard that they're good, and then you get in there and you're like, oh, this guy's okay. Sometimes you get told that someone's fine, and then you get in there and they're like, they've been seriously undersold. This guy's phenomenal. Everyone told me that Rey Mysterio was the best at what he does, and then I got in there with him, and he was exactly as advertised, just the best at what he does. He was just effortless in what he does, and like, it doesn't matter how old he gets, it doesn't matter how long he's been doing this. He just seems to age like fine wine. I think he's absolutely phenomenal. So being in there with him is still quite a surreal moment. That was also in Liverpool. So wrestling Rey Mysterio in my hometown with some members of family in attendance, yeah, incredible. Wrestling Rob Van Dam, 5-star wrestling. For what it was, I know it was short-lived, but what a wild time in my career. I still look back on that as one of my actual favourite little stints that I ever did. And I do think it set me up quite nicely to go on to the next step, which turned out to be NXT UK. They were very close together. And that's because I was given 5 weeks of TV. That's all it lasted. It was 5 weeks. But I was given 5 weeks of live TV with no real script and just the freedom of, can you go and fill 25 minutes with an in-ring promo? And I go, yeah, sure, let's go. So learning on the job, trial by fire. But I actually have a real special place in my heart for 5-star wrestling.
And now going back to Burning Heart Wrestling, can you tell me a little bit about this committee of wrestlers that are working behind the scenes to make this so special, and also about the seminars that you've had today and people getting an opportunity to go on the card?
So yeah, this whole thing started as a lot of things do. We're just a bunch of mates talking. You know, we spend a lot of time on the road, traveling to different venues and different states and cities. So, and then even then just catching up with my friends back over here who are obviously still heavily involved in wrestling, where we would just talk and think what we would like to do. We set the world to rights. We talk about how we would do things and how we want to try and harness some untapped talent where we think that they could maybe they could do more if they were given better opportunities. All of these conversations lend to us just being like, come on, let's go and do it ourselves again. Let's get this set up and we'll be the guys pulling the strings. But when I say we're the guys pulling the strings, one of the big things that I think makes Burning Heart special, one of the things that I think you can really see when you start watching what it is that we do, is that when I say that we're pulling the strings, what I really mean is we're trying to put the right people in the right places and give them the opportunity to take those steps on their own. If I can just say, like the aforementioned 5-star wrestling, they actually gave me a lot of freedom. Whether it was by design or not is irrelevant. I had the freedom to grow into a certain spot. And that's what we're trying to do with a couple of the guys that we know have the potential to get up to that next level and just maybe haven't been pointed in the right direction. We're pointing them in the right direction, and then we're getting out of their way. We're trying to encourage them to take the ball and run. There's plenty of guys on this roster who are hungry for that next step and more than capable of taking the ball and running. And it does genuinely fill me with pride to know that we're the guys that are giving them that opportunity. And then when I watch them do it and smash it out the park, it's just class.
Perfect. Zach, thank you so much for giving me some time. I really appreciate it. But before I let you go, is there anything else that you'd like to mention?
Just that, you know, we're here with Burning Heart Pro Wrestling. Like any of the guys that are on the show, any of the guys and girls that are on the show, just keep on coming out and supporting them. Like, if COVID proved one thing, it was that wrestling needs its fans. So just keep on coming out and supporting the lads, because without fans, there is no wrestlers. So any young wrestlers out there, keep on getting out there and pushing. We never mentioned the seminars, but like that is a big part of this project that we had. Again, we're trying to encourage the younger generation. Part of that is physically getting in there with them and passing on the knowledge that we've been lucky enough to learn from Shawn Michaels, from Matt Bloom, from Terry Taylor, from Christopher Daniels, from Chris Jericho. Like this advice that we've accumulated over the years, we're running these seminars to pass that knowledge on to the younger guys and girls in the UK, whilst also offering somewhat of a tryout scenario, for lack of a better term, where we can then harness these guys and like get them into the shows and again point them in the right direction and then try and get out of their way. So yeah, wrestling's nothing without its fans. Keep coming out supporting us, keep supporting the boys and girls, supporting Burning Heart, but also the other independents in the UK. Like it's not just Burning Heart Pro Wrestling. We do have a lot of friends here, and the British wrestling scene was booming, right? Like it was the hottest thing in the world at one point. It cooled off a little bit during COVID, but we're rebuilding again. Not just us, other promotions are rebuilding. Well, we can't do it alone. So everyone gets back on board. Let's get back to that boom because it was one of the most fun things to be involved in the world. And I want that for the talents, for the fans, for the whole wrestling scene. I want that again.